I am here to help Nigerians at home and abroad to understand the fundamental and foundational problem which has plagued the country since independence and has made Nigeria to be a mere geographical location and a scam with no real national interests. The problem is singularly responsible for Nigeria's poverty, backwardness, underdevelopment, and in fact it is the mother of all other problems that will eventually lead to Nigeria's inevitable breakup or disintegration, if not urgently resolved. People think Nigeria's biggest problem is leadership, but it is not true. Leadership problem in Nigeria is a mere side effect of the biggest problem, just like religious problem, corruption, injustice, tribalism, etc. Let us now talk about this root cause problem that Nigeria has, which is the foundational and mother of all problems in Nigeria, and when resolved will enable all other problems to be solvable, as Nigerians will be able to unite under a common voice to defend the national interests which they presently don't have. Unfortunately, until now, Nigeria has no national interests. The root cause of Nigeria's problem is the conflicting interest between the North and the South. We can further break this down, but I will not go into that for now. Some of the elites in the North have openly defined or mentioned this in interviews and TV programs as the interest of the North and the South has never been able to speak under a common voice, but obviously have divided interests traceable to what I will call interests of the Southwest, interests of the Southeast, and interests of the South-South. So obviously there are no national interests in the real sense. It is this root cause problem that the January 1966 coup was trying to address and failed. It is the same root cause problem responsible for the failure of the First Republic and the reason for the July 1966 coup and responsible for the Civil War. In fact, it was because of this root cause problem that Yakubu Gowon rejected the Aburi Accord. It is this root cause problem that produced the fake 1998 constitution. The leadership problem and crisis in Nigeria is a byproduct of this root cause problem because the system has never and will never produce leaders that have national interests without having personal, tribal, religious, or regional agendas. In fact, there are no national interests. This also explains why the northern youths and the southern youths cannot connect and unite under a common voice, and the very reason why there will never be a revolution in Nigeria. Like I said, Nigeria has no national interest and has never had national interest because the system is incapable of producing national leaders. What Nigeria had from the First Republic up till date are groups of civilian and military leaders who came with personal, religious, tribal, and regional agendas. But none of them have national interests because there are no national interests. And the politicians know that and take advantage of it, and of course always go unpunished. Who is responsible for this root cause of Nigeria's problem? The so-called founding fathers were all responsible for this faulty foundation that will eventually lead to the collapse of the country called Nigeria if the problem is not urgently resolved. Unfortunately, the founding fathers of the First Republic, Azikiwe, Ahmadu Bello, Tafawa, Awolowo, Akintola, Okotibo, Okpara, and others, were regional lords who unfortunately were unable to transform into national leaders. They all came to the federal government with hidden regional, religious, and personal agendas and had no national interests. None of them was able to genuinely transform into a national leader. They failed to put the nation first and all came with hidden, religious, and regional agendas. It was all about who gets what and who dominates whom. This crisis was what the January 1966 coup was trying to address and also failed due to the same problem it was trying to correct. This is why Nigeria has no national interests, and what the founding fathers succeeded in creating is the so-called interests of the North and the interests of the South. There is nothing in Nigeria that was established based on objectivity, and this explains why there is a naval base in Kano, and all the defense and police academies are in the North, just to mention a few of them. The continual marginalization of the Igbos is due to this problem, and even the recent rejection of Nigeria's tax reform bill by the northern politicians, despite the fact this bill is fair and is based on derivation, which will distribute money in line with how much you are contributing, is another example of this root cause problem. The Nigerian system does not work on fairness. It has no respect for justice. It only works on conflicting interests, and there are no national interests written down anywhere. Nigeria is a mere name that means nothing, or does not count to the politicians. Nigeria is a scam of a country that does not exist and has no foundation for any national building. What really matters to the politicians are the interests of the North and the interests of the South. And this is eventually going to happen when God grants them their wishes and prayers, when Nigeria finally disintegrates to those lines of interests at Nigeria's breakup, unless Nigerians make deliberate efforts to save their country from potential breakup. How can this root cause problem be resolved? This foundational problem can only be solved through deliberate steps taken through dialogue and sacrifice by both the North and the South that will produce a constitution that is made by the people and for the people and acceptable to all Nigerians. The region must be allowed to develop and control their own resources, both human and national. Education, power, health, and policing should be the responsibility of the regions. Non-interference of the military in the Constitution should be embedded in the Constitution and should be respected by the military. National interests should be negotiated to replace the conflicting interests of the North and the interests of the South. A 50-year vision should be prepared based on the agreed national interests, which will be binding on all incoming governments, and the progress measured, analyzed, and communicated in writing to every stakeholder every 10 years. Every agreement must be written down. Everything should be done with all sincerity and transparency, without any hidden agenda or the mindset to dominate each other in uniform. Nigeria's national motto should be changed to achieving peace and unity through equity and justice.